As technological and medicinal advancements steadily continue and the constant demand for products increase, the wealth of supplier countries also increases with it. Whether it be Charles Koch or Bill Gates, there is always an innovator who causes a dramatic increase in their country's net national worth. One place that is always in the news for all the wrong reasons is Africa. Whether it be the starving children, genocides, or Ebola, Africa seems to be the country with the least percent of population educated and most percent of population starving. And according to the United Nations report, Africa is the continent with the most people below the poverty line. But Africa was not always like this. It in fact at one point in history was one of the most prosperous lands in the world, and its leader Mansa Musa was the richest man of the time. But it was not only during his time period that Mansa Musa was the richest man in the world, but sources such as Huffington Post, New York Daily, and Financial Times say that he was in fact the richest person of all time, his net worth beating out Bill Gates, the current richest man in the world according to Forbes in 2014, by $318.5 billion. So, how did Mansa Musa's leadership directly result in Africa's prosperity and the wealth of the world today? Up until the 14th century, Africa was given the title of the Dark Continent in European maps. The outside world had little interaction with Africa, and Africa had little to no interaction with the outside world. What Europeans failed to realize is that African kingdoms, especially West African, had been flourishing for centuries then, even before the end of the European Stone Age. While Europe was conquering other areas of the world, Africa managed to stay unconquered and flourishing up until the 19th century. But with every flourishing kingdom comes a mighty downfall, and for Africa, that mighty downfall would be the Kingdom of Ghana. Ghana, the first West African kingdom, had a well-organized government and political system that would eventually prove not to be as durable as expected. The emperor, whose succession was matrilineal, meaning the emperor's sister's son succeeded the emperor, was at the top of the government, and he was assisted by a council of people who helped him make decisions and deal with government affairs. Next was the dominant royal clan, or the head of the warrior tribe that led the people of Ghana, who were organized into confederations. Although the system deemed to be a well-organized way of living, between the trading rivalries and the internal conflict of religion and power, the empire would not last much longer. During the 12th century, the Almoravids, a group of North Africans originating in Morocco, conquered the Kingdom of Ghana, state by state. This quest was not out of the ordinary, though. It seemed to be a usual routine for great West African states to be conquered, sucked dry of resources, and then mismanaged by the government. But this specific collapse was vital to African history because from the ashes of Ghana would rise the great Mali Empire and eventually the magnificent Mansa Musa. Musa I was born in 1280 BCE. It is unknown who his parents are, but records show that he is the grandnephew of Sundiata Keita, who founded the Ghana Empire in 1235 BCE and would begin an empire that would become one of the world's greatest during the time period. There is very little known about Mansa Musa's childhood and life up until his come to power around 1312. According to Arab-Egyptian scholars, Ali Mar's quote from Mansa Musa was appointed deputy by his predecessor, Abu Bakr II, and eventually became king when Abu did not return from a mission to reach the Atlantic Ocean. He added the title Manta, which means ruler, when he came to power, and his name Musa translates to Moses. Therefore, this made Mansa Musa the African ruler Moses, and he would eventually live up to his namesake. Throughout his reign, Mansa Musa made it a vital point to encourage education, trade, and commerce in his empire. Sankore University, built during the reign of Mansa Musa, attracted more foreign students than New York's top universities today. Not only this, but it still stands today, being one of the three ancient West African educational centers. There was also the Gingerabere Mosque, built in Timbuktu. This mosque, a new structure in the Mali Empire, was built in which the skeleton was made of palm tree instead of only mud brick, which eroded when it rained. By building madrasas, mosques, and universities, and helping to promote and ensure the protection of trade routes, Mansa Musa helped to make Mali one of the most powerful empires of its time. But his support of education and trade is not the only thing that helped make Mansa Musa and his empire well renowned. It was Mansa Musa's Hajj to Mecca that helped give him his legacy, showed his leadership, and would put his name and Mali on European, Italian, and Spanish maps. It was the year 1324 when Mansa Musa set off on his pilgrimage to Mecca. He trudged across the terrain of Africa's Cairo and Medina with some 60,000 people in his caravan. Accompanying him was also around 80 camels, which total carried around 12 tons, and he also roughly had 500 slaves, each carrying a 6-pound golden staff. When he arrived, Mansa Musa gave out numerous amounts of gold to the poor, so much to the point where he caused its value to dramatically decrease and would cause the economy to be dramatically affected for the next century. Mansa Musa's generous act of kindness and the amount of gold in Mali was so famous worldwide that in the year 1339 Mali appeared on a world map, and this would eventually lead to a depiction in the Catalan Atlas of Mansa Musa holding a golden nugget in 1375. Most importantly, though, was what Mansa Musa brought back with him. On his voyage back home, Mansa Musa stopped in the city of Cairo and donated large numbers of books. In return, he brought back with him Arabian and Quranic scholars and architects, including al-Sahili, who would use influence of the Spanish, Arabic, and Persians to eventually build glorious mosques in Gao and the major trade center Timbuktu. It is these places where trade would eventually help bring items into the empire, such as cowrie shells, that would serve as the African form of currency during the 14th century. Not only did these large cities such as Timbuktu serve as a major trading post for trans-Saharan caravan routes and place for religious worship, but it was a major place where books were written, copied, and imported, which also corresponds to the time period Germany first began its paper production, therefore possibly making it, and other Western European countries, a place of outside trade for the Mali Empire. Mansa Musa also brought back 4 descendants of Muhammad, also known as Sharifs, who would help increase trade with Muslims by carrying their religion across the trans-Saharan trade routes. With these people, Mansa Musa would bring Mali to the height of its power under his rule. After Mansa Musa's return home, he lived for approximately 13 more years before dying of natural causes. Since there is no written record of his death, there is much debate over when Mansa Musa died, after ruling 20+ years. Ranging from 1332 all the way to 1337, most historians state his death being 1337, but they can only approximate the year he died, since numerous accounts from his son, older brother, and Muslim historian Ibn Khaldun all suggest different dates. But, with all of the accounts, historians can approximate that Mansa Musa was around the age of 57 when he died. But the year of his death is not the most significant effect he has on history. It is how greatly Mansa Musa impacted Africa and the legacy he left behind. Mansa Musa left behind a kingdom so far expanded that it transformed into an empire. The empire stretched from as far left as the Tukulars in the west and Gao in the east to Morocco in the north and the southern forests, which according to the Moroccan explorer Ibn Battuta took approximately 4 months to travel from the northern to southern border. Mansa Musa helped create gold and salt trading routes across the Sahara, and Mali also became a major Islamic scholarly center due to the fact that Mansa Musa was Muslim and encouraged it in his empire, but did not force it among his people. As Mali became the center of knowledge in Africa, Islam naturally intertwined itself into the culture, so people there who were not educated in school were educated in the Muslim world. Mansa Musa also created a cultural diffusion by showing Africa to Europe and the rest of the world, and by helping pave the path for Muslims, by bringing economic stability and creating a good government for a country that was said to be the richest country in the world at the time. He showed that Africa was more than a poor country with little money. As seen by the European description of him as the richest and most noble king of all land, Mansa Musa helped to educate Africans and increase and expand their trade to the outside world. And, if anything, Mansa Musa showed his fellow Africans during the time, and the people in years to come, that it is the heart that makes a man rich. He is rich according to what he is, not according to what he has.